First of all, it's good to be back from India after being a month. I just wanted to know it's like at 9:30 in the night over there. So the effects of not having slept during the night because it was daytime over there, all that is, but the best thing is mom is in great shape, in good health. She's happy, she's safe, and I could not be happier about coming back and begin ministry again without having the stress of having to worry about her. Travels were safe. I thank you for your prayers, and now I'm back to this very, very awesome weekend. I had 5 masses this weekend, including a wedding, and after this mass, 15 baptisms. We have 15 baptisms after this mass, and many of these kids are going to receive their first Holy Communion. So grandparents, parents, godparents, thank you for standing by your kids in this journey of faith, and we are, as this community, so happy to let these children come to Jesus, to be touched, to be changed forever. So this community is with you. Folks, imagine this. We are the survivors of a pandemic that killed 7 million people. That's just from COVID. If you count the people whose life situations and health changed because of COVID, and COVID indirectly affected their health, that's a lot more. But 7 million people, and we survived it. You remember the COVID quarantine? You remember what church was like? You remember what school was like? You remember what family was like? The COVID quarantine affected every aspect of human life. Now just imagine a quarantine that would last a lifetime. We barely did it for a year, but imagine a quarantine for a lifetime. And perhaps that gives us an insight into the fate of lepers in the Old Testament and during Jesus' time. The laws about leprosy in today's first reading may sound very oppressive, but in reality they were reasonable. Just like the pandemic quarantine, laws regulating leprosy were necessary to deal with a highly contagious disease that lacked modern medicine. Today, leprosy is curable. In those days, it wasn't very contagious. Nevertheless, the condition of lepers was immensely pitiable. Ostracized, looked down upon, and avoided by family and society, they lived a life of total isolation. Having said all this, my homily is neither about leprosy nor the leper in the gospel reading. I'm choosing today to focus on Jesus who healed the leper. And I want to focus on the God that Jesus reveals in and through the healing of the leper. And that's where I believe the true message of the gospel is. So here are my 3 points for today. And I want to begin by talking about the God of the peripheries. The God of the peripheries. Folks, so the society of Jesus' time followed the Mosaic laws around leprosy. However, the gospel account of the healing of the leper breaks all Mosaic laws. The leper, instead of using wooden clappers, so in those days lepers had to make their presence felt. And how they did that was by clanging this wooden clapper so that people would know that this person is a leper and move away and avoid contact. So instead of using his wooden clapper to warn Jesus of his presence, he dared to approach Jesus. He was breaking the Mosaic law. Instead of avoiding socialization, the leper knelt before Jesus and begged him to heal him. He actually talks to him. For me, though, it is how Jesus responded that is even more interesting. Jesus responded unlike the rest of society and even the religious establishment. Instead of looking down on the leper, Mark tells us that Jesus was moved with pity or compassion. Instead of staying clear of the leper, Jesus stretched out his hand. Instead of avoiding contact with the leper, Jesus touched him. He broke purity laws. Instead of further ostracizing him, Jesus restored him back to society. He said, go and show the priest so that you can now move about freely in society. But the point I'm trying to make is that there is a God whom Jesus reveals in this story. And not only this story, but all the four Gospels reveal what I'm calling a God of the peripheries. In the tax collectors, the sinners, the prostitutes, people like the Samaritans, and today's leper, Jesus embraced those on the peripheries. He hung out with them, he worked with them, he ate and drank with them, and restored them to society. Now, Jesus' response to the outcast leper raises questions for us in modern society and in today's church. This story raises some very serious questions for us, particularly as Catholics, but even in general. So the questions are like, who belongs in the church? Who does not? Who are the insiders of society? Who are the outcasts of our society? And who decides who is in and who is out? And why? But the most important question of them all is, if we think like the rest of society, or do we think like Jesus? And if we think like Jesus, what are the implications of believing in a God of the peripheries? I raise another question, and this is my second point. Who is the leper? So there is an interesting detail in today's gospel story that we might be inclined to overlook. Jesus asked the leper to keep the news of his healing to himself. Don't spread word about this, okay? You're healed, your life is changed, but keep this to yourself. And I'm surprised that Jesus trusted the man who violated the Mosaic law to keep the news to himself. Of course, the man went and publicized his healing. And Mark tells us, hear this carefully, he spread the report abroad so that it was impossible for Jesus to enter a town openly. He remained outside in deserted places. In other words, the man is restored to society, but now Jesus has to move about in the peripheries. Jesus is where the leper was, and the leper is where Jesus was. Jesus has changed places with the leper. Now, the climax of this movement of God towards the periphery is best exemplified in the death of Jesus. You know where Jesus died? Outside the city of Jerusalem. Jesus was killed outside. You see, humanity is in, but Jesus is out. What a paradox. In fact, the entire story of Jesus' incarnation is captured in the story of the healing of the leper. Jesus left heaven to come out to us in the peripheries, heal us of our leprosy of sin, and restore us back to heaven. The leper restored back into society is symbolic of humanity restored back to the garden, to heaven, to eternity. And so folks, hear me out, please hear me out. The leper is not just somewhere out there. The leper is also you and me. Who is the leper? You and I. We're all sinners. We're all infected by the leprosy of sin. But God did not look down upon us. God did not avoid us. And God did not further ostracize us. Rather, through Christ, God stretched out God's hands, touched us, and healed us. And today, this ministry of healing and reconciliation is continued in the sacramental life of the church. But it all comes at a cost. These 15 children to be baptized today, they're all going to embrace eternity, but it came at a cost. God became a God of the peripheries so that we might be restored to eternity. So in my third point now, I really do want to talk about the implication of the story. And I want to begin by sharing an experience of mine back in India on my visit. So I had made an appointment to meet with an orthopedic doctor in a local Catholic hospital. This hospital actually is just right in my neighborhood, and it's run by the diocese. And I made an appointment with the doctor. By the way, this may surprise you, but in India, you can get an appointment with the doctor, see the doctor, get the test done, get the results of the test, all within 24 hours. Isn't that great? Yeah. So next time you want to get something, come to India. We'll take care of you. Okay. So I made an appointment with the doctor, and I was number 5 on the list to meet with the doctor. When the doctor began seeing patients at 9:30 in the morning, I was the first to be called. And I was taken aback. And I soon realized that it was because the hospital record showed my name as Father Satish Joseph, right? In a Catholic hospital, the priest was seen first, even though there were 4 other people waiting ahead of me. To be honest, I was not unhappy. But again, to be honest, I was unhappy because I'm very sensitive to clericalism. It saddened me that structures exist where some are more privileged than others. So I've made a decision. I have another appointment when I go back in June, and I've decided that this time I will make sure that I will be called in the same order in which I am to be seen by the doctor. Now, I've shared a simple example of how society or a religious institution can create structures for belonging and not belonging, for the advantaged and the disadvantaged. This is what the leper experienced. Such structures exist across society and even in the church. Race, social status, political clout, gender, wealth, sexual orientation can make some people belong and other people to be excluded from society and church. They make some people privileged and others disadvantaged. So if we believe in a God of the peripheries, then we must constantly evaluate the kind of society and church we help to create and sustain. Most of all, we must remember that we were once on the peripheries, and that it is a God of compassion, a God of justice, a God of love, and the grace that God gave us that restored us back to where we belong. Folks, on this Eucharistic table and at every Eucharist, God is still a God of the peripheries. See, Jesus is here. And we all belong, no matter who we are, we all belong in spite of our sinfulness. There should not be, and I hope there are not, insiders and outsiders here. We all belong. As we worship the God of the peripheries, may we also walk in the footsteps of Jesus, who revealed a God of the peripheries. People of God said,